Welcome to the RIT Nerds Podcast, Episode 2, with your hosts, Ron, Nathan, Chad, and Jim. On this episode, you'll hear a roundtable discussion between the four of us where we start off talking about packaging down firefighters, and like so many of our conversations in the past, we delve into a number of different topics and down a few rabbit holes. Thanks for listening and enjoy.
So the first question that we were going to talk about was packaging. What is the difference between taking your time to package to speed up an extrication versus the just grab and go? How do we find that balance in speed versus efficiency? So we sort of broke that down into a couple different questions. First being, first off, like, why is packaging important?
Who wants to take it?
I mean, I'll hop on if that's all right. I think regardless of whether we have to travel a long ways or if we have to travel at all in any instance, I think it's a moot point. I think, at the very minimum, a package should be completed as far as what we know to be like a traditional package, if that's the case. And that's broken down to even like the lowest skill level, because we know who our A players are usually on the fire ground, and we know who our second, third string players are on the fire ground, right? But even a bare bones skill of 3 simple steps of like, okay, we're going to locate the buckle. Now I'm going to intertwine the buckle between someone's legs, and I'm going to rebuckle the buckle, right? Like, it's so easy. A caveman can do it.
Right.
But regardless of whether we have to, hey, let's move out this way, it's going to be like 5 steps, or, hey, we know we're going to have to go back through the entire hallway we just came through where we have a truck crew, an engine crew, flowing lines, all that mess. I still think it's an advantageous thing to do, because what if we go to travel 5 feet this way and there's a collapse, or we have heavy fire above and now we got to reroute our position, or we got to reroute our travel, and it is going to take a longer time. And then now you're thinking, well, crap, if we would just would have packaged in the first place, maybe we wouldn't be in this spot. So I think as many people, as many hands-on you're going to have on the Mayday firemen, you're there. Why not? Is my line of thinking. Because that's always our go-to. Like, what we identify, we silence pass, we radio command, we check air. We got all these people doing all these things. We got a guy on the airbag. Someone else should be converting Mayday firemen, right? If not, you have a 4-man crew. You think about it in terms of officers got the tick, he's ready on back, command know what it got, airbags doing his everything. You got a guy assessing the face, right? Silence in the pass, and then maybe a guy making his way down to lower level for legs, getting ready position. That leaves everybody working, right? So we say we're going to forego packaging in any instance, working, or maybe 2 guys aren't working. I just think it's always a smart thing to do, regardless if you're going to need it or not. You have it done. And in my experience, it's better to have something and not need it versus, man, I really wish I had, done this. And then now we're sitting there like, wish I could have done that, but we're in a crappy place. So I don't know. That's just my take on it. I mean, you're already there. Why not? So.
Yeah, no, I agree with that.
Yeah.
I think when you get, like, you might have a flashover condition or something like that, then you might be those rare cases where you don't have time to package because of safety. But that being said, I'm not dragging them all the way outside the building because of those situations. I'm just taking them to a place where I can then package them safely to continue the extrication.
Sure.
Right. And one,
absolutely. Yeah.
Stats, as you guys know, I like my numbers. I mean, I look at the fact that Don Abbott's Project Mayday, we got 1 in 8 RIT members calling a Mayday. You look at any of the studies that have been done, you have anywhere between 20 and 38% of RIT members calling a Mayday. And of all those, over 80% of those are air issues, because the RIT members are using way more air than they're prone to using in the normal fire activities. And they're not used to training probably at that level of air consumption. So their bottles aren't lasting what they think. And one thing I always like to do when I show people packaging is I'll just get a student to sit down and lift them up by their shoulder straps. And inevitably, I've squatted down with my legs become fully extended. And by the time I'm actually taking any of the person's weight, I'm bending, trying to curl them up with my arms. There's about a 4-inch gap between the shoulder and the shoulder strap. Put them down, package them. Now when I go to lift them, once I've straightened my legs, I haven't even bent my arms yet. They're already lifted up off the ground. There's no gap between the shoulder and shoulder straps. It creates way more efficiency in movement.
Yeah.
And it's going to lower my air consumption by making that whole extrication way more efficient. And therefore, we can start to eliminate that 38% of RIT members calling their own Mayday, right? And that's where it comes in huge to me. So I agree with you, Chad. If you've got that 10 seconds to package somebody, then totally, especially if you're doing any distance, any lift, any high sills, window sills, anything like that you're lifting somebody out of, then packaging is a huge, huge point.
Because you look at it, we're not asking you to do a math equation or rocket science or brain surgery. I'm literally asking you to unbuckle, move a leg, buckle, right? So, and I think another thing that goes into this is because, like, if you look at places like FDTN, Breathing Equipment School, a lot of other different survival schools and instances, if you forego the packaging, I never forget, like, when I went through crew school in Charlotte, we had to get my training instructor through a gauntlet through survival school for RIT week, and he was not packaged correctly. And when we got him out of a box, a low profile, up and over type thing, I remember when I got down there to him, he wasn't just, air pack off of him. He was practically undressed, right? So if we forego the packaging of any type, right, what does that also snowball effect to, right? Air, right? Like I think I sent it to you, Nathan. It was more importantly, the air consumption should not be interrupted for any means. If we forego that packaging, we know if we got to pull that air pack, arms fill out, right? And it's just easy on off, right? It could go that route. And then what it would lead to? Well, now I got to put Ron's air pack back on in a crappy, environment where I can barely see and everyone's jacked up and I got the boss yelling at me. And then we throw in we have interior crews making their way to the Mayday now. And so everybody wants to get hands-on. We've talked about that before. So like I said, if you've got the time, 5 to 10 seconds, by all means, efficiency of movement, and it doesn't interrupt the possibility of interruption for air supply for the Mayday fireman.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's situation dependent, right? Like if we show up and he's in the first room on the left as soon as we enter the door, if we could just manhandle him out, right? Mm-hmm. Why would I try to take those extra time to make a simple maneuver not really be beneficial, only 10 feet? But then again,
right. I agree with that. Absolutely.
I go back to the Scafani fire in 2005. You play devil's advocate. Yeah, you're saying it could be easy, but then we had an actual line of duty where it's been hard. I think, like you said, doing that conversion is key, because trying to hit on the numbers Nathan brought up, we're now teaching crews that first RIT team gets to the patient or to the victim, converts them, gets them on air, tries to move them, and then basically is backing up for a second RIT team to come in, hopefully.
Right. And they're even tying to, that fireman or area around that fireman. Right. And then are y'all preaching resetting off the pass to follow, have that before you leave? Yeah.
So, we use a search line, if you will. I call it a highway line. It's the highway right to the patient or victim, if you will. So, but honestly, like messing around with James's strap, I would forego converting the SCBA waist strap at all. If you have that strap there, we put it through probably 320 evolutions, and it was so much faster and so much more efficient than doing the buckle. So, but that, if you have that available, but if not, I think we should be setting ourselves up for packaging no matter what.
Yeah. And I like, I don't mean to cut you off, James, but like when you go back to, like you were talking about, like maybe like 10 feet or 5 feet in the door, like I even think like the quick pick is a viable option too, because we're not grabbing air, we're not potentially taking air supply away, or legs, right? But no, that's crazy about the 3 steps in and he comes out naked. That's
I mean, I'm sure it was a little farther than that, but You know,
sure. Right.
when you look at the diagram that the NIOSH report has, it's like, you know, it was only a couple steps down and around the corner, it seems. You know,
Yeah.
I wasn't there, so I could be totally off base, but, you know, I try to wrap my head around that stuff and see what we're actually teaching is being practical to what we need to do on the fire ground.
Have you guys, where you've been, James, Ron, Nathan, have you guys seen, and this may be like just way out there, but have you guys seen guys coming off the rig or going in to work and they already have themselves converted?
No.
I have not seen that, but
Um,
when we teach survival to the recruits now, what we tell them is if you are calling a mayday, your conditions allow you, meaning you're not in a drastic I'm getting out the window right now type deal. You're in that I'm lost and I'm low on air and I'm trying to find my way out. We tell them go ahead and convert your waist belt yourself.
Yeah.
That way it's done. And if you end up being put in that horrible situation that you can't get out of and it comes down to someone else having to find your unconscious body, that is time saved because it's easier for you to do it. Now, I have not seen anyone come off a rig like that. It's
Right.
hard enough some days to see people come off the rig with their waist belt buckled just to begin with.
Right on.
You know, and that's, it's a constant, laziness versus I look cool versus just forgot about it. You know, I'll be completely honest. When I switch from the back seat to the front seat, there's so many other things that go through your mind, and you have to be able to reach so many things in the cab that I don't buckle. You know, everything is loose until I get out of the cab. I tighten my shoulder straps. I lean back, give them a good tight, and then I get out. But I don't
I
do
do
my
the same thing, James.
until I'm out and let everything hang. And you know, some days I tell my rookies this when I'm working, like, look, my goal is, yes, I'm going to get them buckled, but don't take what you see in the first 30 seconds as the way my finished product. You may see me running up towards or doing my 360 with my waist belt undone, but by the time I come around from the back side of the house, it's going to be done and tightened up and we're buckled up to go in.
Yeah.
You guys hit on a bunch of good things with packaging, right? I'm more along the lines of the Ron train of thought here, whereas I think for so long we have done RIT training as such a checkbox mentality that the product that I see on the fire ground is we have to do these things, and our guys stop paying attention to what's around them, what's happening. You know, and I see that, and I don't want to go down this rabbit hole yet, but the most obvious one to me is the 4-man recon deploying to someone who called a mayday saying that they're burning. And they're taking an air pack to them versus a hose line because they are not listening to the mayday because we haven't talked to them about that. We've only trained them in that RIT recon relief extrication platform, that, confined space entry method. So to packaging, again, I go by the conditions drive tactics thing, right? If I go in the front door and they're 5 feet from the front door or 5 feet from on the level that we're going to bring them out, we're going to drag and go. But what Ron said about the 3 steps, what's crazy about that, if you look at the report that we did at work a few years ago, that year-long study, remembering back to what we saw, we had put the unconscious firefighter in the basement of the burn building. So they had to extricate them either up through the hole or up the stairs. And the stairs had a 90-degree turn about 3 steps up. And on any time that they did not capture the lower half of the body, typically with a waist belt, by 1/3 to halfway up the stairs, the pack had pulled off their shoulders and their coat was coming up and their midsection was exposed of our live victims. And on a few occasions, we had to stop them because they were going to injure our role player, which was, important to us that we were able to continue using live role players in that unconscious firefighter position, because we got feedback from them that you don't get from a mannequin.
Right.
What positions actually hurt you, what positions were the most comfortable for you, and we put that all into the report, which was great because that's the first time that I've heard back from or seen that in a report or in a study where you get some victim feedback. But it doesn't take many steps. Like you were saying earlier, Nathan, you're sitting on the ground and you lift them up. That's your first step, and you're already lifting the air pack off their shoulders. So
Way up.
yeah, for me, if I don't see daylight out, within 5 feet of where I'm at, meaning and not a window. If it's a window, we're packaging. But if I don't have daylight and 5 feet to the door, we're packaging. And we've started, our recruits start packaging on like day 2 of SCBA. So by the time we get to RIT and survival at the end of recruit school, we barely have to touch it because they have been doing it for the last 16 weeks. And that has really helped when that skill got moved up to the beginning, to like SCBA intro versus at the end during RIT itself. We noticed that now they're getting the reps and the sets. And, I noticed that maybe 2 recruit schools ago, because that's when the change happened that I saw. And I don't, as a field training instructor, when I was at our academy, I don't deal with our recruits very much, only certain parts of their class, one of them being survival and the other one being RIT. So it was very apparent to me, like, oh man, these guys, this class is knocking this skill out of the park. What's changed? And go back and talk to the basic training instructors, and like, oh yeah, this skill is done on day 2 of SCBA now, or whatever it is. It's very early, and it gives them so much more time, which makes sense, right? They're already there. They're already learning to use the air pack. They might as well be practicing that skill set.
Right.
Because it's, I love that, Ron, very thankful for you putting the number of reps that you did on the rapid packaging strap to get good feedback. And by that, I mean either positive or negative feedback. I'm happy that it's positive feedback, but, we still teach that that's an extra piece of equipment. So the bare minimum, that you have a waist belt, that has to be the number one thing that we teach. If you have the exterior, some other pieces of equipment that work well, then great. If they're in your pocket, learn them, know them, and use them. But if you don't have them, then, even if you do have them, you still have to be a master at that basic packaging technique, because who knows what happens when you pull the door chalk out of your pocket outside to wedge the front door open and the strap fell out and you don't have it. You have to be able to fall back on the bare minimum. It's like searching with a tick versus searching with hands, or using the hydroram versus the halogen bar. It all falls back to, you have to be very good. You have to be good at the basics. You have to be good at the bare minimum.
Right. And that's where one thing comes in. I really like to show the students you have more options. There should always be a plan A, B, and C going through your head.
Yeah.
Because I find guys, like we talked about getting off the rig. I get out of the front seat too, and I get off. I'm grabbing my tick, I'm grabbing my helmet, I'm grabbing the side of the irons out of the cab behind me. So I'm not really either buckling that waist belt until I get to the door, or as I'm walking up to the house.
Yeah.
It's not because I'm trying to be lazy. I'm trying to be efficient, But, no matter what, we still see guys all the time with their straps, shortened halfway, and they're, tucked behind their pack, or, wrapped around the bottle. You see this in pictures all over the internet. It's happening. You can't deny it.
It happens like every day. Every day you look at a video of a prominent city or county or jurisdiction and they're good videos and they're doing good work, you're like, man, if you just took that extra 5 seconds and put your waist belt on, I could really get behind this. And I know people like, oh, you're just nitpicking. Like, dude, I mean, I've had friends that have died in a fire. Like, what? It's a very simple thing. That thing ensures that your pack is staying on you. I don't. Uh, it's very hard to be able to reach out and say, well, what's tied to that? Where's the negative? Like, where's the because the people come back and they'll say, well, show me where that has happened, where it's come off of somebody during a collapse. Like, it's all rumors, but if you look at the Wilmington triple line of duty death, Artie, and not to be the Monday morning quarterback, but her pack was ripped off of her during the collapse. And when you talk to people who know them, to know that department, they will tell you that she very rarely wore her waist belt. Now, that's all third party. So that doesn't mean that she wasn't wearing it that day. It just means that is, the perception that people had because of what they saw many times. But her air pack was ripped off of her during the collapse. And that might have been the difference there. You can't say for sure one way or the other. I mean, we can't. But I know that I would rather ensure that my pack stays tight to me. I know that thing is what keeps me alive inside.
Right. Well, question for Nathan, not to cut you off. Nathan, how many statistics, from the Project Mayday is a fall through a floor? Put him on the spot right now.
Fall through the floor, 22%. It's
right.
Now the number one leading cause of Maydays, 22%.
So if your pack's not strapped to you well, what's going to happen when you go through the floor?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I know that it takes an extra couple seconds to do it. Am I guilty of not doing it in the past? Sure. But can we all improve? Yeah. To
Absolutely.
sit back and say, I'm sure there's pictures of me that I didn't have my waist belt on. But to sit back and say that, well, I haven't changed in the last 10 years, that's crazy. We all do. We all change one way or the other.
Right. You got anything on that, Nate?
Okay, sorry. Well, I've got a few things, just maybe wrap this one up before moving on to the next question. But I mean, I agree with the whole keeping it simple. I think a big part of, like you touched on, James, on the basics of doing it with just your pack or what's in your pockets, Ron, is huge. Because again, going back to numbers, we got 93.4% of all Maydays are resolved from the inside. RITs only get involved 6.6% of the time. So if we're relying on equipment that we carry in our RIT stash, well, it's not going to be there most of the time. So keeping those things simple, making sure everyone's trained on it. Fantastic to hear that the recruits there in Fairfax are doing it in recruit school that efficiently. I mean, that's a big thing. I think 1407 should be almost now mandatorily into 1001 because of Don Abbott's stats. I think it would be huge. But anyways, that's a different subject. I just think one thing, I'm going to quote something from the Asheville study here because I think it sums up everything we've been talking about quite well, what they found and what we've been talking about. And that's just, so direct quote from their conclusion on packaging. The viability of a compromised firefighter is directly affected by packaging. On the surface, one would not assume packaging to be a life-saving action, but our analysis proves otherwise. The act of converting an SCBA in and of itself is not a life and death task. However, it is indicative of a well-prepared RIT. When compromised firefighter is properly packaged, brackets SCBA conversion, close brackets, the likelihood of PPE removal or air supply loss is greatly reduced. Packaging also makes transporting the downed firefighter easier and more efficient, especially when you have to move up, down, over, and under obstacles and building topography. The SCBA, when properly converted, acts as an integrated drag harness for up to 2 firefighters and does not increase the compromised firefighter's profile. In each evolution where the compromised firefighter was not packaged, bracket 17%, close brackets, compromised firefighter was not viable when removed. There were 2 evolutions in which the packaging was completed by the firefighters and that firefighter was not viable. In those 2 instances, the first instance, the SCBA conversion was disconnected by a subsequent company prior to removal. And on the second occurrence, packaging didn't take place until the 51st minute, and the compromised firefighter had already been allowed to run out of air well prior to packaging. So the only 2 times that packaging actually failed in that whole study, one, the person wasn't viable before they were even packaged because it took air supply too long, and the other one, they were disconnected during the removal. They did try a Mantomat in that study as well, and it failed fairly horrendously by the sounds of it, reading the report. Because I know a lot of departments love the Mantomat. I think you played with that as well, haven't you, James? Mantomat and in packaging.
So
did you guys use it?
You're breaking up a little bit. You're saying the man-to-man packaging, or
the Mantomat?
The Mega
we
Mover?
usually use it in EMS.
Oh, the Mega Mover.
Yeah, Mega Mover.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
we so first off, Nathan, what page of that report are you reading from? Do you know? Or
I quoted it, printed it off separate. I quoted it and printed it off separate on a different piece of paper. But it's from the conclusion section of the report. So it's at the very end in the conclusions where they talk about packaging.
Let me so I have that report up in front of me right now because it's in my binder of reading, and it's a great report. When we started putting together our study in Fairfax, we used this report to help us frame how we wanted to do our study, and I used quotations from this report in our findings because of their recommendations that they had. So
you quoted several.
If anyone that's listening, it's the Asheville Fire Department Report on Rapid Intervention Operations Analysis, and it's from 2015. And if you are looking for it, you can download it from Adapt and Overcome Training's website. It's on our knowledge section of our website. And we will get the quotes page number and put it into the notes on this audio. Yeah, we tried the Mega Mover and we used it because, or we actually had to force a couple of our crews to use it. We were about halfway through the year and no one had used it yet. And it was something that we were hypothesizing could be awesome, right? It's lightweight, it folds up, it's easy to use, it's easy to stuff into a pocket, or, maybe not a pocket, but it's easy to move into the scenario. So we forced a couple crews to use it, and I don't remember how many times, maybe 2 or 3, but each time we used it, it pulled apart. And when you really look at how those Mega Movers are made, they're not, they're made to carry weight, but they're not made to be durable while dragging on the ground. Unlike a Reeves stretcher, the Reeves is heavy duty for all kinds of things. So yeah, I'm happy that we forced a couple crews to use it because it gave us the findings we wanted in the opposite of what we were hoping for. But it gave us the verification that this is not a good tool to use when you're trying to drag a firefighter out of a building. Does it mean that if it's the only thing you have, don't try it? No, but it was not successful for us. And I think there's many better options out there.
What I took interesting from that report is that I'm trying to remember it word for word, and I'm not going to, but basically what it said is if crews using that Mega Mover, if they didn't train on it prior to using it, it was totally useless for that crew at that time. And that kind of blew my mind a little bit. It's like, it's just a blanket. You lay somebody on it, you lift up, and it's like, you think it would be simple, but obviously in lights out conditions or under stress, it changes the game. You know, kind of opposite of what James experienced. I have a mega mover that I've taken to every RIT class, and we drag somebody, you know, wherever we are, at least 2 or 3 times to show the students, hey, this is what this does, and this is how it works. I mean, the thing's got holes where I can punch my hand through it, you know, and it's actually been pretty durable, for me.
That's
You know, I
good.
mean, you know,
Um,
but Chris Cummings actually came up with one. I'm trying to remember the name of it.
is that the one you showed a picture of it a few years ago,
Yeah.
right? It had the cutout for the SCBA in it.
Yep.
I remember
Yeah,
seeing
it's
that
called
on
the
your Instagram.
Rapid Rescue Device, and you know, it's basically a thick tarp, if you will, you know, and it seemed to work a lot better and really manage the firefighter a lot better. Not necessarily the hole for the SCBA, but just the design, you know, and the more rigidness of it. So,
Gotcha.
but it's interesting to see both perspectives of, you know, I have had some success with it, and you guys had, you know, not very much success with it.
And you know what? Some of our problems may come from we were in a burn building. The burn
Right.
building is concrete floors, concrete steps. Where we had our major failures was on the stairs, and it
Yeah.
doesn't mean that it. You know, we saw that they were being torn apart, but there's also more than one brand Mega Mover, and the brand that
True.
we have may not be the brand that you have. You know, I remember, and I can't remember which one we used. If I dig hard enough, I could find it, but it looked different from the Mega Mover that I remembered from when I first came into the department. So it might be that we started buying a very cheap Tyvek style Mega Mover that is basically just 2-inch webbing, you know, cheap 2-inch webbing with some Tyvek holding it into a mat, you know.
Right. More
Um,
for Ian.
exactly, and that's what it was for. Uh, so that might be more of the conditions that they're being put in, you know, in the concrete floor in the burn building. You know, sometimes they're smooth and sometimes they're rough, and it depends on that actually it does affect how things move. Um,
Absolutely.
how is your experience with using it to move members up a set of stairs?
Well, we've done it in the burn building, you
Hmm.
know, just, you know, no smoke, no
Yeah,
fire, nothing like that. And it was easy because the burn building are the way ours are designed, you know, the stairs are, you know, 4 feet essentially.
yeah,
You're not
yeah.
getting your 30-inch, you know, typical stairway, you know. So we were allowed to, or easy to move guys 2 by 2 up the stairs. In a
Yep.
residential home, we have a lot harder time doing that. Usually it tends to be one at the head, one at the feet, and basically we're sliding it down that stair. So
We had the same. Um, where a lot of our problems came from with all of our devices were the stairs, where we were dragging a firefighter up the stairs. And the reason for that, what I can just kind of deduce from the things that we watched, you know, the instructors, we had a few thermal imager cameras, thankfully, that recorded. So we were able to record the crew members in the 0 to limited visibility theatrical smoke that we had for them.
right.
And when we were watching these problems unfold on the stairs, like with the Mega Mover, as they were lifting up the stairs and they get tired, they start dragging more up the stairs, and then the firefighter starts sliding out of the Mega Mover. That
Yep.
seemed to be the case between the times they used the Mega Mover and the times they used the Reeve stretcher. We had a lot of crews. From what I remember, we had a bunch of crews try the Reeve stretcher, and that failed miserably for them.
Yep.
And you hit on a very good point a few minutes ago about, you know, if the crews were not training on the piece of equipment prior to it, they're not going to do well. And that goes against what a lot of people in the back of their heads think, right? It's what we know now, though. But what we tell ourselves is, I'll be able to rise to that occasion.
Right.
Even with things that we use every day, right? The reef stretcher, if you're on a fairly busy fire EMS crew, you're probably using the reef stretcher once every other day or so, just moving someone in and out of their house. But you're not using it on a firefighter, you're using it on a civilian with minimal clothes on usually. And you're not using it with fire gloves on, and you're not using it in zero visibility.
Right.
Those 2 or 3 things, and like you said, Ron, that stress level adds in, and it turns into a complete shit show. We had a couple crews take a backboard in and try. They wanted to do the face down firefighter on the backboard, but they kept trying to put them on there with the SCBA down. And people are like, well, why were you doing that? Like, well, and there's no real good answer from what they were telling us, but here's the answer. If you guys have read Deep Survival, I can't remember the author's name right now. I have the book, Lawrence Gonzalez. It's actually right behind me.
Yep.
Deep Survival is a great book. If you guys haven't read it, get out there, get it. It's $10 or $12 on Amazon, and it takes you through survival stories across all kinds of different things, right? Scuba diving, airplane crashes, being lost in the woods, and they relate to us. The scuba diving ones, he talks about one specifically, and they go over their emergency procedures. They go over the emergency procedures before they dive, and they'll tell you like, oh yeah, if I have this procedure or this emergency, I'll do this, this, and this. The only thing that changes is being in the water 40 feet down and the stress. And when the stress happens, they go completely haywire, and they don't remember the things that they told you 15 minutes ago up in the boat. And that's because we're not training to that stress level. Right. We're not incorporating that stress level into our training. And that's, it's new to the fire service in the last 5 to 7 years. We see companies are doing it now. We see that there's, training companies out there that are pushing it. You see stuff at FDIC about it now, which is great. But it's been in the military for a long time. It's been in the police, some police departments for a little bit longer than the fire service. But it's accurate and it needs to be done, right? We can't have our training can't just be the typical pull a line, throw a ladder. We have to start as our members are getting better and mastering the basics. We have to start throwing in those external factors, those external stressors. The simple thing of a civilian standing in the front yard yelling at them that their baby's trapped inside while they're pulling a hose line, that's easy to do with a role player, with one of your adjunct instructors, and that little bit puts a huge amount of stress on that recruit or that firefighter's mind as they're stretching the line. You throw them off their game for a minute, and you gotta start doing that.
Right.
We have to get away from this closed loop, clean environment, training environment, and get into the messiness that is our reality, so that we can start mastering that from day one, right? And get away from the check boxes and incorporate the OODA loop, constantly observing our atmosphere and letting, knowing that it's going to change and we're going to have to make multiple decisions repeatedly.
No, I agree.
You look at talking about applying. Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead, Nate.
I was just going to say, just to touch on, like, you look at just added stress. How many people, like, just going through the entanglement box, which is in a wide open room, you've blocked them out, and they're going through the entanglement box. They're already starting to get stressed out a little bit, and then their low air goes off, and you can physically see them freak out. Like, they just freak out. They're still, it's clean air. Everything's fine. They're just blacked out. Like, nothing bad can happen to them. They can just reach up, take the radiohead out if they want, cut them out. But just that added stress of being in a perfectly clean and clear environment with no visibility, and then knowing what that low air alarm means, people buckle. So when you talk about just adding that stress, they're not even ready for that kind of stress, right? Just that simple vibra alert going off or bells going off. Like, I couldn't agree more with that. Once those basics are mastered, we got to push that next level, right?
Right.
Yeah. And it's, it's our skills are perishable. It never ends. 10 years in, 20 years in, it may be easier for you to work in that stressful environment, but we have to be training. It doesn't mean that you're killing it every day, but do something every day. Do something every day to get to hold the line, as Jocko says. Hold the line. If you're not moving forward, at least you're not moving backwards.
Right. I mean, not to go off subject here because we're kind of steering a ship a little bit, if you will.
Yeah.
Like instead of stretching a hose in a parking lot, like, go to a school on a weekend or something, but like change your environment. Don't let your firefighters have to be told or dictated from your boss what to do. They should be able to think on their feet. And I think that's one of our biggest problems. I think guys break my stones all the time. They're like, well, RIT's not needed. RIT's useless. If you learn how to stretch your hose right and put water on fire, RIT's useless. Yeah, RIT's useless, but all these people that are getting caught up in Maydays, they're being helped out by people inside. And if you're RIT qualified or RIT trained, you're going to have a better chance to help that person inside, even if you're not a part of the RIT crew.
Yeah.
So having that skill set and knowledge base is going to make you better for everybody.
It's Asheville, back to the Asheville report, they have times in there. And if I can find one real quick, they have, as they
I know what
document.
you're looking for. As you're looking it up there, James, I think you're looking for, they time everything between a RIT team of 4.
Here we go.
And,
I got it right here,
if
buddy.
they're trained, there you go.
Companies in which 100% of members had graduated technician level RIT training were more efficient than companies which only staff 75% graduates. Congruently, companies staffing 50% technician level training graduates were even less effective. As a result of this analysis, it is determined that it takes an average of, and they're talking about locating a compromised firefighter, but they hit that same statement at every skill set in their thing, whether it's locate, packaging, or extricate. They have the times to show that RIT trained firefighters are faster because they have the practice of those skill sets. And that's right. I mean, it's simple. Ron, you hit a great point. It's not where you are on the fire ground, meaning are you the company outside or inside? It's the skills that you bring to the table. It doesn't matter who makes first contact with the Mayday firefighter. It matters in a sense of what that person is capable of doing to help them, right?
Right.
I may be on a truck company inside. If we hear a Mayday go out for a lost firefighter, well, guess what? I'm searching for victims. That person is a victim now, and we're going to start,
Absolutely.
After talking and communicating with command, we're going to start moving that way. And if we come to an unconscious firefighter, we are trained to package and remove. I'm not waiting for a RIT team to come in. We become the RIT team. And that's, again, back to we need the 90s and the early 2000s for RIT did a great thing getting us moving forward. But we really hurt ourselves by only looking at 1 or 2 studies for like 20 years, right? The Phoenix study was groundbreaking, but that we based all of our RIT response models off of one study, and that only looked at one type of Mayday. It looked at an air emergency with lost firefighters or a lost firefighter emergency with air problems. When you're looking at what's happening on our fire ground now, yes, a lost firefighter is one of the top 3, I think, still, Nathan. The lost firefighter still.
It's tied for falling through the roof.
Yeah, falls through the floor, falls through the roof, and a lost firefighter. So we're still there, but that's one of 3 things that we need to be looking at, and it's only one of, when we try and break this down, and what we started teaching both at work and with ADAPT is when you're inside, there's 3 things minus a cardiac problem. There's 3 things that are going to kill you: fire, running out of air, or heat, air, and trauma. And if you survive the trauma event, meaning you're in a collapse and you're pinned and you can't get out, it comes back to the first two, air and heat. So as a RIT team on the outside and as on a fire ground in a whole, those are two problems we need to be ready to solve. And we've done a really good job as a fire service practicing for the air emergency, but we're not there yet with the heat emergency. And that's what scares me more, because there's no time to react, or there's very little time to react to that emergency.
Right.
And I think we're probably stepping into one of the next questions here when you talk about equipment that we have for RIT. The culture change of having your RIT team with a charged hose line, if the fire ground allows you, if the building type allows you, meaning a house, a townhouse, a smaller garden apartment. Because when that person goes through the floor, they're either going into a compartment that's on fire or one that's been extinguished. And if it's on fire, we don't have time to go find a hose line and charge it. They need help right now. And as a RIT team, remember, it's rapid intervention, not rapid rescue. And intervene means to stop the freaking problem. And the problem is heat,
Right.
I mean, first we're going where the Asheville study I love for that reason. I bring it up all the time for the how they break down the percentages, and it's 2 minutes. Just getting rid of one technician, replacing them with a non-technician, it increases the time on average by 2 minutes just to locate the firefighter. And the big one with that one is the Maydays. So 100% technician team, they were calling a Mayday 20% of the time, 20% of the members. When you went down to a 75% technician team, went up to 38% Maydays for that RIT team going in. But to go on to where we're going here, and that's our question 3, because I know we're going to talk on this one the most, but we might as well kind of get into it. But for me, I think where guys get caught up on the idea of a hose line and a RIT team is the definition of what RIT is. And I think that's where it gets in is when guys get upset about the idea of a RIT team having a hose line, they're thinking that the only people on the fire ground that are ever going to be RIT are the 4 guys or 3 guys or 5 guys assigned RIT by the IC. And the fact is, when a Mayday comes in, one thing that does hold true with the Asheville and the Phoenix and everything else is it's going to take way more than just those 4 guys to rescue anybody that's in anything more than an easy extrication. Anything moderate to difficult, we're going to need lots of people. And so, the team in there that might be the backup hose line, or maybe they were fire attacking, it's one of their members is having a jammer in the fire room. Well, the rest of the team's still in there. Guess what? They're part of RIT now. Anybody involved in that rescue operation is part of RIT. So just by reassigning the backup line to push in and stuff, guess what? RIT has a hose line, because that backup team's no longer the backup team. They're part of the RIT route that's assigned in this Mayday. And your operations division is going to have to sign another backup line to go replace that. But you're going to bump them up, and they're part of RIT. It doesn't mean that my 4 guys with the air pack and all that stuff necessarily are bringing the hose line, but there's another crew immediately assigned to take that hose line in with them, because they might, 93% of all through the floors, fire involvement, right? Leading cause of Maydays, 93% fire involvement. If I know this is big on you, James, you agree, we now outnumber them, but is what are you gonna do? You get there. There was a line of duty death not that long ago, and we were all listening to the audio on that. The RIT team got assigned to go rescue a guy who was overcome by fire on the 3rd floor, and they couldn't get to him because of fire. They couldn't get up the stairs to the 3rd floor because there's too much fire. It took 5 minutes or something like that before a hose team was brought to their location so they could get up the stairs, right?
Yep.
There's going to be situations where, guess what? They can't do anything until a hose line's in place. But I think when you've got anything that's through the floor or people falling through the roof, the 2 highest percentage of Maydays, 43% of all Maydays are encompassed by through the floor and through the roof. 70% of the time when you go through a roof, you land on the rafters. Well, there's probably fire in that attic. What caused the sheeting to fail? I mean, if you're 70%, you're on that rafters, we need a hose line on the top floor while we're pulling ceiling like crazy to pull you out of there, unless we can get you from the top. But that mindset has to change, and maybe my RIT team gets up there and they can make a quick grab, but 10 seconds behind them, there better be a hose line coming with another company. That it's just that problem has to be understood. And I think the base root of the problem and why so many people freak out at the idea of RIT with a hose line is we get back to the definition on what the definition of RIT is. And I agree, those 4 or 5 people, whoever the IC is assigned as RIT, should be moving rapidly into the building, 100%. And we were going to talk about company tools and stuff like that, but I believe strongly that your RIT company, once they're assigned as RIT, they carry their company tools with them on all assignments. You bring your RIT air pack with you and your search line as you do your 360, as you throw ladders, because I want to deploy from anywhere, because we look at all those other stuff. We can take RIT on average 3 minutes to just enter the structure after a Mayday. Well, that's kind of unacceptable. So we can't have that shit on a tarp somewhere. We got to be able to go from wherever we are.
I look at
that's all part of that.
So to jump in just for a second here, you're right. Everybody looks at it and like, oh, we need to be rapid. That's what in the name it says fast. We got to be fast. That's great. But what's the second word? That crew that made it up to the 3rd floor quickly and can't do anything for 5 minutes, and now they're calling for a hose line. Well, if you brought one with you, it might have slowed you down by a minute, but you're still ahead of the game that you're in right now by 4 minutes. And that's what chaps my ass, man. If that's me calling for help, that's what I'm scared of, because it seems so simple in my head right now. And I think that's because, again, all of our ideas and our concepts that we have floating through our brains are based on your experiences. And my experiences are, I had a friend of mine die in a garden apartment fire from a rapid fire event, and they're not getting hose lines to him, and that's what he needs. And it goes back to, at first you're sitting here like, oh man, there's all these other problems. There are a ton of problems on that fire ground, and the least of which, only one of them was that they didn't get a line up to that floor. But what is the Mayday? If the Mayday is heat, there's only one solution to that, and that is water. And the way I look at it, Nathan, when you're saying take the RIT pack with you, well, if I'm a fully if I'm RIT and I'm doing my lap, I don't have my guys take the air pack with us, because the way I look at it right now is if we are going into an air emergency and I am going to try and be rapid, I'm starting with a crew where we have full bottles. And again, it's structure dependent, right? If we're going into one of our large or our highest percentage of fires, which are residential fires, townhouses and garden apartments and single families, I'm not as concerned about running out of air fast in there, because there's so many exit points. Now, can that bite me in the ass? For sure. But that's the decision I make. If we're going into a strip shopping center, different story. We're taking it with us. But again, I feel like as a RIT coming in, we have air with us in my bottle. Now, is it enough? Not enough. But is it enough to make somewhat of a change? If you have that true, we get in, we find them, they're unconscious, but there's no heat emergency, and we're going to protect, we're going to hang out for a couple minutes and try and get a smoother extrication. Cool. Everybody slow your breathing down, slow your heart rate down. We're in a protected space. We're gonna call for more help, and we're gonna keep this guy alive, and we're gonna start slowly moving in the direction to get out. Yeah.
Can we take it back even further than that though? My thing is, for the guys that I want on my RIT team with me, is I want thinking firefighters.
Absolutely.
Right? So like if you get a Mayday out and your Mayday says it's hot in here and I got fire, my boss, or if I'm in the boss at the time, or senior man, whatever you want to call it, in charge of that RIT team, you need to take that into your consideration and be proactive there, you know?
Absolutely.
Bring it to command. I need another hose line now, or, divert that hose line to here or something like that. We need to have these guys thinking and saying what they need. You know, sometimes we need stuff and we don't ask for it, you
True.
know?
Yeah.
And it's like, what are you going to yell at me because I asked for a hose line?
Yeah.
Fine, yell at me, but I need this.
Yeah.
This needs to be done. So, having those thinking firefighters, I think, is probably just as important as having skilled firefighters and having, strong firefighters, if you will.
True. I mean, I couldn't agree more, Ron. I think we have to, and some places have, but this robotic training environment where they're going to be good at skills, but they don't even know what's happening around them. That's not the right training environment. There has to be a mix, and we have to tell them from the beginning that I want your brain turned on. I want you thinking. I want you to be respectful of your crew, and you're not just overrunning people with words just because you're not filtering what's happening in your head to your mouth, but you need to be running through that OODA loop the entire time you're responding to the fire, on the fire, cleaning up from the fire, and going back home. You need to constantly be evaluating your decision or what's happening around you, and then making some mental notes to ask your boss about at the end of the day, or the senior firefighter if you're a new guy, like, hey, we did this at this point. Why did we do that? Oh, great point. Let's sit down and grab a cup of coffee, get some water, and hydrate, and we're going to talk for 30 minutes on what happened on this fire. So we get the most out of it, get the most learning out of it.
I after the RIT calls we've gone to, whether we're a team being sent to another town, or if we've been deployed on an actual call, I still, at the end of the call, I'll always take pictures of the fire scene, at least as many sides of the building as I can.
Yeah.
And then I'll go home and I'll write down a quick note, of what we did that the best I could remember. So this way, when we do have our critique, like, this is what happened. This is why we did this. This is why we did this. Oh, we forgot to do this. We got to pay attention to that next time, because we don't see everything. But I think having a solid critique at the end of the game, and discussing things like, like, why didn't we bring this tool, and why did we bring that tool? I know Nathan wants to move into tools, but for me, I'm starting to think in the process of having my officer being less hands-on and more of the environment person, utilizing that tick and maybe having a Halligan or her, and really paying attention to the crew operating and the conditions around us.
But it's decentralized command all the way from the top down, whether it's from the incident commander to the crews, and then from the crew boss to the firefighters on the crew. We have a task that we've been given, and I expect our people, our experienced and knowledgeable people, to be able to come up with some of their own plans. And I shouldn't, as a boss, shouldn't have to dictate to them every step of the way. Obviously from a newer person to a seasoned person, that changes a little bit, but and you have to adapt to that, and handle your crew correctly for who they are. But absolutely, man, if there was one thing that you could or I could not change, but just ensure that my firefighters had, it wouldn't be one skill set. It would be the ability to use critical thinking. That's it. We can hit skills all day long, but if they can't think critically, that's very hard to teach. Especially for us, we're a bunch of dumb firemen. We're a bunch of dumb firefighters. I'm not a psychologist. I can teach you, we can go train all day, but I can't teach you the mental skills you need to think critically. I can just tell you need to do it. I don't know how to do that.
Right. Nice.
All
well,
right.
It's good talking, fellas. Be safe, brothers.
You too, guys. Hey, I like instead of be safe, I like be hard to kill.
There you go.
Yeah. It's another topic, another discussion for another day.
Well, Nathan's got some podcasts to listen to, so.
True. All right. Have a good night, guys.
How to carve a pumpkin. Night.
Good night.
Like,
Thank you for listening to the RIT Nerds podcast, brought to you by RIT Ops, Prepare for Rescue, and Adapt and Overcome Training. Stay tuned for more episodes to pop up, as we're planning on dropping 1 to 2 new episodes every month.